Hi, everybody. This is Tom Simmons, and I am the priest in the hot seat. Today, we continue a series we've been doing looking at Charles Murray's new book, Taking Religion Seriously. And we're working our way through his chapters where he details his journey getting off dead center from a secular mindset to take religion seriously and to end up embracing Christian faith. And in chapter 6, he describes a strange new respect that he gained for Christianity in the late 1990s while he was researching his excellent book called Human Accomplishment. His goal in this book was to compile all the best examples of arts and sciences in progress from around the world from the last 3 millennia. He wanted to figure out what influences lay behind these advances, these creative marvels. He called it one of the most intense periods of my work life. And at the end of it, I had a strange new respect. There it is, a strange new respect for Christianity. Why? He discovered that Christian societies for the last 1,000 years were the most excelled in advances in arts and sciences. And his best explanation for why was Christian individualism, with its focus on a person realizing their own personal potential for the greater glory of God, for the benefit of society. Murray realized that this had no analog in any East Asian or South Asian or Mesoamerican or Arabic civilization before or since. He did find an example, something similar in ancient Greece, which had a form of individualism expressed by Aristotle. But in Greece, that individualism was an elite thing. It was only a small minority had the character and the intelligence to strive for that kind of individualism. But in Christian society, we were able to build on that and to universalize it based on theological themes in the Bible of the creation of human beings in God's image, in which we bear the glory of God's intelligence and relational nature. Even in the fall, that is preserved in some form and calls to be redeemed. And that's really the story of the whole Bible. It's the steps that God took to win human beings back, to restore us to our original dignity and capability, and to set us on our path of destiny. And to redeem human beings, God became a human being, which has great power in elevating humankind. This kind of Christian humanism basically invented the individual as we know him today. In fact, that's the title of a book that I'd like to recommend to you if you want to read more deeply into this. It's called Inventing the Individual by Larry Seidentop. It is a very thorough exploration of how these Christian theological ideas permeated Western Europe after the fall of Rome. He goes all the way back to the 4th, 5th centuries and brings us up through Constantine, of course, and Charlemagne, and he demonstrates how these ideas shaped the fundamental consciousness of Europe. Now, Murray concludes that Christians created a culture, and this is how he says it, in which the most talented people believe that life has a purpose and that individuals can act efficaciously to fulfill that purpose. These twin cultural values created the context within which science could develop and the arts could thrive. Now, we've all heard the standard line that a Roman Catholic Church is institutionally hostile to science, right? I mean, it's an article of faith. It could be in the secular creed that we saw back in chapter 1 of Murray's book. But Murray grapples with this fact, this question: why did science as an institution, as a discipline, why did it develop in Europe and nowhere else? He concludes that the character of God and Christian societies made science possible. This is the cradle within which science could be born. It didn't happen anywhere else. Christians' depiction of God as a rational, responsive, dependable, and omnipotent being in the universe, and his creation, his personal involvement in creating the universe, which as a result, the universe now has a rational, lawful, stable structure that awaits human comprehension. Murray also points out the role of the churches in the creation of the university, beginning in monasteries where ancient texts are being preserved and copied and propagated. Cathedral schools in big cities. These are where the first universities grew, in Paris and Bologna and Cambridge and Oxford. Folks, if you like the Priest in the Hot Seat podcast, I ask you to do two things. One, send it to a friend, because that's how these things go viral. And two is, if you have a question that you'd like me to try to answer, then put it in the comment section below. Thanks, and I'm really glad to have you here. And these universities weren't merely seeking to preserve knowledge like the ancient libraries of Cairo and elsewhere, of Alexandria and Caesarea. They weren't just conserving knowledge. These universities were dedicated to expanding knowledge. And Murray cites an academic study that says that in the first 150 years of the founding of these early first universities, within 150 years, they estimate that 750,000 students were educated at these universities in those first 150 years. And the impact that those students went on to have in spreading knowledge and creating a culture in which science and the arts flourish cannot be calculated. So that's Christianity and the founding of science. But think also of the flourishing of architecture and music, of literature, of painting and sculpture, the fine arts. The artistic contributions of Christendom were, of course, deeply rooted in the Greco-Roman masters from the past that we inherited from the ancient pagan forebearers. But in the hands of Christians over those centuries of the Middle Ages and beyond, these art forms were advanced and transformed in astonishing ways. And just think of the orchestra, the cathedral, think of Shakespeare, ballet, the painting of the Sistine Chapel. Think of the artistic and musical explosion that we have seen in the centuries of Middle Ages and the Renaissance, of the Enlightenment in the modern world. Murray gets a little funny when he talks about the difference in art that modernity brought on, that the secular creed profoundly changed the arts. And he describes that profound change as the arts fell off a cliff in the 20th century. Now, he evidently has an axe to grind here, but listen to what he has to say. He describes how the artiste became a prophet, God's gift to humanity. Rather than seeking ways of expressing truth and beauty and the good that are out there in this world, they sought to bring, seeking to bring transcendence of these things into everyday life of human experience and art forms and churches and communities in everyday life. Instead of trying to glorify God and to show the beauty of what he's made and to beautify society, to uplift the masses with beautiful art. In the modern age, the secular age, the artist adopted relativism and alienation and contempt toward and protest against what was seen as bourgeois society. The artiste began to elevate themselves, seeking to transcend the baser elements of bourgeois society and to become prophets of the pointlessness of life. And I recently experienced a good example of this, the Rothko Chapel in Houston, Texas. It's just off the campus of the Jesuit University of St. Thomas there. And I visited it last summer and was anticipating something very different than what I got when I walked into that chapel. Now, the founder of this chapel, the patron of the artist Mark Rothko, describes the purpose of this chapel in this way. Quote, "We saw what a great master can do for a religious building when he is given a free hand. He can exalt and uplift as no one else." The Rothko Chapel is a spiritual space, a forum for world leaders, a place for solitude and gathering. It is an epicenter for civil rights activists. It is a quiet disruption, a stillness that moves, promoting spirituality, creativity, dialogue, and action, leading to a more equitable and empowered and engaged community. Now, these are wonderful sentiments, but I was left wondering how this chapel does all that. These words seem like assertions without a lot of grounding in reality. You look at these paintings and there is obvious skill involved, I'm sure, in working with canvas and paint of such scale. Rothko was commissioned to craft a sacred space, and what he produced was great fields of darkness, barely varying immersion in the darkest hues of blue and gray. For sacred imagery, what did he produce? He seems to be channeling the bottomless, dark abyss. And it's striking to see the day I was there, and in the history of this place, all these eager secular people gathering to stare into the abyss, to ooh and ah, and show how enlightened they are by darkness. It seems we've come a long way from the Sistine Chapel. When Murray said that Western art fell off a cliff in the 20th century, I imagined that this is what they fell into. As Western artists rejected Christianity, the quality and the relevance of their art fell off a cliff. And that relationship says a lot about the influence of the Christian faith over all the centuries before the 20th century on the arts. Now, if you like this episode, Hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell so that you know the next time we drop a Priest in the Hot Seat episode. And help us make this thing go viral by sending it to your friends. Thanks, and God bless you.